All right, good evening, everyone. We are here at the Creative Academy in the happy hour session for January the 8th. So nice to see everyone here. And just on the perfect time is Leslie, who is here. So Leslie, I thought we'd actually start by talking. So you had reached out to me, and your question was, in essence, how do you know if you should give up on a manuscript? And you were attempting to sort that out by, you were going through some feedback. So I wondered, did you want to share your Excel spreadsheet? I've had a chance to see it, but I'm curious if you're open to sharing it.
Oh, sure. Why not?
Okay. Now, do you want to share from yours? I can make that possible. Or do you want me to share it from mine?
Did you get the updated version that I sent?
I did. Do you want me to share?
Sure. That probably, being the techno dweeb that I am, that might be easier.
We can do that. I love that you think that I'm technically savvy. So I wonder, people should be able to see it. So first off, you are more technically savvy than I am because you actually did this as a spreadsheet.
Well, Donna did make significant improvements. I'll say that. Mine was pretty. That was about all.
Why don't you walk us through basically what's on the spreadsheet? So kind of on the left-hand side, it looks like who you sent it to.
Right. So the first bit are the agents that I've queried, and then at the bottom is sensitivity readers and beta readers feedback, because Donna suggested I put that in as well.
Yeah. So I'll just go for people so you can see down here. We have people that have read it.
So there was 52 submissions in total. There's a couple blank spaces in there. And then she kind of put all the fulls at the top and the partials at the bottom. And then I just went through different parts of the feedback. So whether it was personal or a form, whether they asked me to send my next project, whether they felt there were problems with the pacing or there was no problems, did they connect with the voice, did they connect with the characters, did they like the relationship between the characters, did they enjoy the hook, did they comment on any of these things, and then my personal connection with the agent, whether they liked the premise, whether they liked the writing, if they left it with a positive comment or just like, good luck, whether they said something nice. Some of the comments were they just didn't love it enough. Some were that it just wasn't a fit for their list. And then some were, they just weren't the right agent for the project. So I just kind of filtered all the feedback that I got so I could try to make sense of it to see whether or not, I went to a workshop with Genevieve Gagné-Haas at Surrey, and she was talking, somebody asked the question, if you're getting a lot of conflicting feedback, what does that mean? And she said, and it stabbed me to the core, that it probably means you need to give up on that manuscript because you don't know what to fix. So that's what prompted this whole paralyzing self-doubt, should I give up kind of thing.
Okay, so first off, I'm going to say I disagree with that feedback.
Oh, good. That makes me happy.
I'm going to say I disagree with that. I think it raises two different things. So I want to go through a couple of the things. So first off, I'm going to put out to people, if you are tracking and putting out different queries, you might want to see if Leslie would be willing to share this shiny little spreadsheet with you. And it looks like Kirsten's a go for that. Around having some way of tracking, and you do need some way to know where did you send it, but what I do like is that you've included the different kinds of feedback on here as well, so it's kind of a one place to go and kind of quickly have a list of what everyone has been saying. I think it would also let you look for if there were consistencies with stuff, right? Where people were saying, this is a problem, where you're getting more people saying, this is an area that you need to look at, then it might flag for you that this is an area that you need to look at. So I do like that you have that. So one of the things I want to talk about is the two feedbacks that you talk about that I think we unfortunately get a lot, and people don't necessarily know what to make of it. So the first is I just didn't love it enough. So let's take a moment for that. First, we'll take a moment while we all just inwardly cringe as our baby is kicked. Which is how that definitely feels, and talk about what that really comes down to. And it really comes down to passion, right? That's the kind of love that we're talking about here. And I have said it before, but I think it is worthwhile. The fact that someone else does not feel passion for your project is in no way a reflection of your project. I feel zero passion for Twilight. I actually feel sort of cold when I read Twilight, right? So either I'm right and 6 million bazillion people, including those who got giant tattoos of Team Jacob across their chest, are wrong, or there's a personal subjectivity around kind of what works and what doesn't work. So, and I know I have said to people before, think about the last 5 books that you've read. So I'm not even going to go back to like what you read last year, but like the last 5 books that you read, were there any that you just didn't finish? Show of hands.
Yes.
Like you started it, you just didn't finish it.
Yeah.
Right?
Definitely.
Show of hands, were any of the 5 one where like when you finished it, you were like, oh, it's really good. I liked that one. That was enjoyable.
Yeah.
Meh. Bonnie's a little harder. She's like, meh. Was there any where you were like compelled to pick up the phone, email someone and say, oh my God, have you read, insert title here, I loved this book?
Yes.
All right. So we had 2. So Leslie, what did you read that had that effect on you?
Actually, I read 2, and there were things about them that bothered me, but overall, they took my breath away, and they're both magical realism. One was The Astonishing Color of After, and the other one was When the Moon Was Ours. And I read glowing reports on them, and I read people that tanked it. And some of the things they didn't like were the things that I didn't like, but everything else took it up above that for me, so I didn't care.
Yeah.
But
And
there were 2 books I didn't finish.
Kirsten, what did you read that you loved with the passion?
Surprisingly, it was a book club thing that I just was
Speaking
like,
well of book clubs there, surprisingly, it was a book club choice.
well, and I pick them, and then sometimes people don't like what I pick, so I went with a different thing this year, but hands down, it was the Alice Network.
Oh, I loved that book. I did read that one.
It was so good. Like, it's not even like, it wasn't a comp title or anything, but it was just so enjoyable. There was so much. There was a few things here and there I didn't really think were great, but just overall, and how they, just the plot and everything, it blew me away. And so I'm telling everyone, oh, you should read it.
Yeah. So hey, I'm going to stop sharing because it occurs to me I don't need to share at this moment. Now I have all the pictures back. So, I also have read the Alice Network and really loved it, right? So that's what you're looking for in an agent, is someone who has that white hot passion for a book. And those do not necessarily come along that often, right? So first we're going to take that off, that the fact that someone didn't feel that passion for your book, it blows, and clearly they're wrong. Don't get me wrong. Like, that's what I'm going to say about that. They are completely 100% wrong, but it is just a reflection in terms of what it is for them. And where does that passion come from? So sometimes it's a book that comes out of nowhere. So, and it sounds a little bit like, Kirsten, that was something for you, where you hadn't expected to like the Alice Network. It wasn't a book that you were like, oh, this is my jam, I love this author. Yeah. So this was something that kind of came out of nowhere, where it was like, I love this thing. And Leslie, you thankfully had the exact opposite, which is the other thing that happens, where it's something that you enjoy reading, and it just kind of elevates what it is that you're looking for. And it's just like, I love books that are domestic thrillers or magical realism or whatever it is. And this is the one that just does it for me. So first off, always take it when you get from an agent where they say, I just didn't love it. All that is a reflection of, for them, it just didn't work. You can go down a rabbit hole of crazy trying to figure out what it was that didn't work for them. And it could be anything from, they don't think you're a good writer. That is one of the possibilities. It could be there was a plot hole that they didn't like. It could just be, oh, they really liked it, but they just didn't feel passionate about it. And you will, unfortunately, never know what that thing is. But to try and figure it out, that is where you will drive yourself crazy.
I have a question, Eileen.
Yes.
I was talking perhaps through my bumhole when I was suggesting an idea too. Will they also say that if they don't think they can make money with it? Because their ultimate goal is to make a ton of money?
Yes. So the second piece of feedback that you sometimes get, and sometimes they're used interchangeably, it just depends on how the agent sometimes writes their rejection letter, is this just isn't right for my list at this time. Mm-hmm. That's the other one that you will see. And that's another one where it's kind of hard to know what that is, but in some ways it's almost a little bit more specific than I just didn't love it. So it's not right for my list is usually a couple of different things. Either A, they don't really take that kind of work, right? So they don't really, magical realism isn't what they're doing, and you've sent in a magical realism book. So it's just not right for their list. Or conversely, they feel like they have too much magical realism on their plate. And so it's not right for their list because they're wanting to add and diversify. I've been talking to a couple agents in romance, and romance is a very interesting market because so much of romance has spun to indie publishing. And so when I was talking to a couple of agents that are kind of well known for being romance agents, they're saying, I'm really looking, if you know anyone who's got a domestic thriller, or, do you know anyone who's got a fantasy YA? So they're looking to kind of broaden their list because they feel that they're too romance heavy and they're going to have trouble with that. Kind of conversely is kind of what Donna talked about. So sometimes you'll have an agent who might like a book, they might feel a passion for the book. So they'll say something like, it's not right for my list, because what they're saying is, I don't know how to sell this book. Mm-hmm. I recently was going over a query for someone on a mentorship client, and they had said in the query, this book is a perfect blend of, and I'm going to screw this up, but magical realism, fantasy, and historical fiction. And what I can imagine is that some agents are going to be like, but which one is it? How am I going to sell it? I'm not sure the market is there. I have talked to agents who have said, right now the market for insert title or, kind of book is just such a brutal sale that I just don't know if I can move it. I just don't know anyone who's going to take on that kind of manuscript. So sometimes it's that. They don't know how it's going to fit into the market, or the market in a particular area is glutted. So it's less so now, but for a long time, the running joke was, for all that is holy, please don't write a vampire book that's a YA, because there were so many and everybody had written them. And, they would often put the caveat like, you could surprise me, but in general, they weren't really looking for any more YAs. So you would often see a comment like, just not right for our list.
Oh, sorry.
Exactly.
I'm sorry.
I love that Leslie's dog is like, don't you dare say that my mom's manuscript isn't right for a list. So sometimes when you're getting those kinds of feedback, it's hard because you don't necessarily know. So then on to the feedback, Leslie, that you got, like, well, if you're getting mixed advice, that means that you should walk away from your manuscript. No, because I think oftentimes you don't necessarily know what some of that feedback means. If you're getting consistent feedback, that definitely gives you an idea of some area that you might want to tackle. But if you're getting inconsistent feedback, it's just different people putting on whatever their particular issue might be. Do you have a thought, Donna? No? Okay. I just saw you, I saw you bop on your video and I was all excited. I was like, Donna's going to say something.
Oh, well, the only thing I wanted to say was like Leslie stepped out of the frame. I was like, get back here and listen to this, because this is what I keep hearing Leslie say. Is like, and I've heard you say that several times, and so I'm delighted.
My daughter just showed up. Sorry.
That's all good. No, it's all good. So maybe all I was going to say was, Eileen, say it again. Say it again. That's all.
So I will say it again. I am going to say, because you get mixed feedback does not mean that you give up on that manuscript. It just means that it does, and I will say, like, I don't have a glass here, it's water, it's less exciting. I will raise a glass, let's pretend this is just whiskey. I will raise a glass and say, I know there is nothing harder, and that is possibly why some people do give up. It's not coffee in that coffee mug, Leslie, you don't fool me. That sometimes people give up because you feel like, I don't know what to change. So then I think it kind of comes down to some interesting questions. And Leslie, I'm going to make you put your mic back on. You did get a revise and resubmit. And you put it in your email. You weren't sure if you could do it. What was it about the revise resubmit that made you feel like you weren't sure you could tackle it?
Well, basically, she made two suggestions, and one she's leaning way more towards, that I don't know how to do it. She's suggesting that I take out the magical component completely, make it a purely contemporary story. Then I don't know what my catalyst is for the change, and because the violin is so integral to what's happening with the main character and how she changes. Or she says, make it the violin and the magic the complete focus of the book. But the point of the book is it's a young person's struggle to find her strength, believe in herself, and believe she's worthy of, especially of her mother's love. So if I make the violin the focus, then that goes away. So I do not know what to do.
So first off, we're going to make you lean closer to the camera because all we can see is the top of your head.
And my hands waving around.
Yeah. Mostly it was just the top of your head, but that's good. So I think what she's saying, which again, we're not going to argue at this point about whether or not she's right.
No, not at
all. The first thing, let's just take a moment and make sure that we understand kind of what her feedback is. And the way that I take her feedback is that she wants it to be more firmly in one camp or the other. Yeah. That either this is a magical book with fantasy or it's a contemporary, but that right now she feels like it's writing too much in the middle. That's how I take her feedback. Now, again, we can argue whether or not she's right or wrong. Mm-hmm. And you always have the option of saying, thank you so very much. I like it where it is. I want it to be in the middle. I choose not to do one of these two things. That is always 100% your choice. And it is fundamentally your story. And Marianne brings up have you read Susanna Kearsley at all, Leslie?
Yes, I have. I read The Firebird and I loved it.
Yeah. So she's one who kind of also does have books that kind of run, I would say, kind of in that middle ground, somewhere between realistic and fantasy elements. And, I think you really are going for magical realism versus sort of fantasy, right? So, and magical realism to me always does have a strong element of the realistic as a part of it. It's just kind of the real world turned up slightly, but not up to 11, if that makes sense.
Well, from what my understanding of magical realism and the examples that I've read, it is where magic exists in a world, in a real world, and it's accepted as just being there. Like the book I read, the girl has roses that grow out of her wrist, and people are like, yeah, we would.
That happens, right? Yeah.
Whereas, and when I've spoken to so many agents about this, and they keep giving me different feedback. And one said, I would call this a contemporary story with elements of magic, because it's not magical realism. And if an agent is looking for magical realism, they're going to get this and go, well, this isn't magical realism, because it's not. And the books that Stacy recommended me to read was Astonishing Color of After, which is pure lyrical, weird, dreamy, magical realism. And that is not my story. My story is a contemporary with elements of magic, and I don't know what to do. Tell me.
So first off, you don't necessarily have to do anything. So the next question I asked, so just so people don't feel like I'm picking on Leslie, I did send her these questions ahead of time.
Yes. And I've been thinking about them over and over.
What made you want to write this story?
I wanted to write a story about for kids who are the round pegs and the square holes, who don't fit in. And because of that, they end up so riddled with self-doubt that they don't believe in themselves. And all they really need is the opportunity to face a challenge that can show them that they're capable and strong and more wonderful than they think they are. And so, because I love violins and music, and I love magic, I had this vision of this. It started around a vision of this girl in the attic finding this old violin, and it did this weird stuff to her. And I thought, wow, I love The Red Violin, which is a movie about a 200-year-old, well, it's a violin, a red violin that travels through the centuries. It's not magical, but it always winds up in the hands of a young person and helps them learn what they want. And I just went, that's what I want to write. So that's why I wrote it.
I think it's a really good exercise, and particularly if you're going through the query hell process, is to sit down and write in your journal a one-page thing about, why do I feel this story is important? Because that's usually where we start, right? We start because there's some idea that's compelling to us, that's drawing us along, and then we get in the middle of it and we're doing revisions and edits and we're getting feedback and we're sending it out and things are going on, and we kind of lose track of that tether. And that tether is pretty important, because that was what it was that inspired us. That's what made us sit down and put all those words on the page. And so it's the kind of important to take some time to kind of go back to that. And then when you do have to look at kind of revisions or edits, you can ask yourself, if I take that advice, is that getting me closer to what I felt was my vision for this project, or is it taking me further away from that thing? And I just think that's kind of like finding your true north a little bit. So taking a moment, and I think it's really valuable to do that. So, things that stuck out for me is the idea of embedding music into it, the idea of the square peg in the round hole, and that the need for a child to grow, and a love of magic. Like that all kind of came through for me when you were talking. Now, I put down your spreadsheet, but of the feedback that you got from beta readers, so I think one nice thing about getting a lot of beta readers and sensitivity readers is you get a much broader sense of feedback than you're going to get from agents or editors, who often are sending you just a very form letter or something very short. So out of all the feedback that you got from those early readers, what was it that kind of gave you the most spark of joy?
Well, one, that all my sensitivity readers felt that I portrayed a person with albinism perfectly, and that the teens that I interviewed identified the same problems that she was going as far as her albinism goes. And I particularly loved that both of the 15-year-olds that read it, their only comments were like Anna was a real person to them. Like, oh, she was way nicer than I would have been. I would have been madder at my friend for longer. Or I wish she would have tried more. There should have been, there must have been something else she could have tried. So they didn't tell me, oh, the story was slow in this part, or they told me what they didn't like about the characters. So to me, that meant the character was real to them, and that's what I wanted. I want someone that they can identify with, see themselves as, and relate to, and see this person overcoming things and giving them hope. And so I love that the adults loved it, but I really loved that the kids loved it.
So that I think is phenomenal and super important. And I think you should highlight it on your spreadsheet and or post them out or print out those things, because I can tell you that never goes away. There is nothing better than hearing from a reader who felt some connection to the character in your book. And I absolutely love when I'll get emails that would be like, well, what does she do, or what happens to her after this book? And it's like, well, nothing happens to her after this book. The book's over. I'm on to another book, people. But for them, this character is a real person, and they want to check in and they want to know who that person is. And to me, that tells me that you've done a remarkable job. That teens, which are kind of a hard group to write for, because, and I mean, I don't want to guess on you, Leslie, but I'm guessing it's been, say, more than 5 or 6 years since you've been a teen. So you're having to reach back and identify with a group of people, and the fact that you've done that, I think you need to take a moment and give yourself a huge pat on the back about that. So now we know, and Natasha's going to, everyone's doing jazz hands.
Thank you.
Right? So you know what you love about it. You know basically what other people who've read it love about it. So now you're saying you're thinking of tanking it. Why? What would make that feel like a good decision to you?
Because the people in the industry who obviously know what the hell they're doing, excuse my language, can see all these problems with it. So, and they're all different problems with me. Oh, I love the voice. I didn't connect with the voice. Oh, I love the authentic relationships. I didn't get the connection between them. Oh, the pacing was too slow. Oh, I thought the pacing was fantastic. Like, what do I do with that?
Why do you think that will be different if your book was published?
Why do I think that would be different? I feel like it's flawed. If they can't see a vision for selling it, that must mean that people don't want to read it. You know what I mean? Like, these people are in the industry. They know. They have way more knowledge than I have. So, and I would consider self-publishing, but I don't want to put something out there that's, flawed. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that to my name, to myself as a writer. I want to put my best work forward, which is why I'm trying to think of how to do this R&R, because this person is in the industry. She deals with young adult stories all the time. And I don't know. I don't know. You're not helping, Eileen.
Oh, I'm getting there. Just hang on. So first off, make sure that you are reading some of the comments in the sidebar.
Oh, I'm not.
While other people yell at you, not just me. So I guess my question is, we started off talking about books that you feel passionate about, or that I felt passionate about, and those are published books. And there are vastly different perspectives on them. So I'm going to go back to my question. Why, if your book came out, and I can guarantee you, as someone who's had their book come out and has had the misfortune of actually looking on Goodreads, what am I to do with the fact that some people say With Malice is boring and utterly predictable, and someone else who said, I haven't read a YA thriller like that in years? So that's my way of saying, one, allow me just to bring everyone down on a nice Tuesday night. This shit doesn't get better.
Great.
When you put this book out, you are going to have the exact same problem that you're having now, just with a different audience. Publishing people, are they savvy? Yeah, they are. They read a lot. But they are not necessarily any smarter than the group of people that are in this room who read a lot. So they may have an idea of what trend is coming up or what trend is necessary, but they will be the first ones to tell you they do not know what book will break out and what book will not. They are some amount of machinations that will go into it. So they will buy certain books and really promote the heck out of it. And that's right. We are the smartest people in the room. Thank you, Bonnie. They will promote the heck out of it. And you will see publishers who, to some degree, I don't want to say make a bestseller, but a huge part about why a book is successful or not successful is, does it find its readers?
No.
So there are readers who have connected with this book. You have feedback from those readers telling you they have connected with this book. This book meant something to them. They felt real about that character. So then the question is, now what?
Exactly.
All right. So let's just kind of she's like, damn right, that was the question to start with. Why didn't you start here? All right. So I felt we needed to lay that groundwork because I think it's important that we understand it. And Janine put in here, which I think is great. Harry Potter was rejected by basically every publishing house in England. Do you know how many editors right now are like, stupid, right? Like that could have been their bilzillion of dollars, right? But when they read it, guaranteed J.K. Rowling, Joan was getting emails that was like, we don't really feel we need another wizard book at this time. I'm afraid I didn't really connect with Harry. Why is he a muggle? What kind of weird made up word is that? So I can guarantee you she was getting that feedback from people. And strangely enough, if you know that story, when it went to Bloomsbury, which is the publisher that did eventually take that book, the editor gave the book to his tiny son. And it was his son, who I think was 10 or 11 at the time, who came back and was like, I loved it. That made the editor go like, no, maybe I'm not noticing something here that I should have noticed. Yeah. So let's just take a moment, and that maybe the people on your spreadsheet who are the young readers who are telling you that they loved this book, maybe those are the ones that you need to listen to the most, because those are the people that you want reading your book. We there? We're nodding.
We're nodding.
Okay.
I need a glass of wine, and I'm not drinking wine, so I'm just going to drink my tea and suffer.
You're doing soberary?
That's 7 days, 8 days.
Oh, well, that's only 8 days. Some people are doing the whole month. Not me, but some people.
Month, but I've gone 8 days.
Oh, well,
good. This is
good for you so far.
Cheers for me.
Yeah, water. So sad because I'm teaching. So then we can say, okay, so that's what we have in front of us is we have a book that you know connects with readers, that you know is important to you, that you had something that you wanted to do. You have all of those things. So now the question becomes, what do you do? So let's break it down into kind of two different, or actually probably more than that, different trials. So the first thing is to say, what do you do with the revise and resubmit request? So I would take a look at it, and I would first see, like, is there a way that I can potentially spin this book one of the two ways that she's looking at? So one of the ways that I think you could do it is to take the magic out as real magic and have it more that this is how she experiences that violin. Right? So right now, having, read the book, the violin truly is magical. Correct? I'm not remembering that wrong. Yes, Bonnie's nodding. She's read it too, right? The violin is magical. So the other option is that it is one of those things that is somehow left a little bit open around, is the violin magical, or is it her interpretation? Like, does she take from the violin what she needs? So very rough example would be The Wizard of Oz. So The Wizard of Oz opens, Dorothy gets swept away, but at the end she's in her bed, and it's just like, oh, you were knocked out from the tornado. Right? So the question is, was Oz something that really happened to her, or was Oz just an experience that she needed to go through to figure out her own power, and that it was always within her, but that all happened while she was knocked out? Not that I'm suggesting you knock her out, but the idea being that the violin and her interpretation that the violin is magical is really within her, and other people may not believe it. She may even question it at the end. I wrote a book called Unraveling Isabel, and in that book, there's a real question, like, because she's seeing something that is a ghost that is interacting with her. And so the question is that ghost real or not real? And even the main character is not 100% certain. That's fairly universal for a lot of us. I would think if you ask a lot of people, like, have you ever had something that you couldn't explain happen to you? So you feel like you got a message from someone who maybe passed away recently, that kind of thing, where you feel like someone else will be like, well, it was just coincidence that this thing happened. And you're like, no, it's not coincidence that the lilac tree bloomed a month early. It bloomed early because my grandmother sent that to me, because we talked about that tree. And and believe in your heart that your grandmother did that. Someone else is going to be like, hey, we just had a warm snap, sweetheart. Like, that's all that happened there, right? And you will see that happen over and over for people, where they feel that something magical has happened to them, and someone else may or may not believe that thing to be. And the reader then can make a choice as to whether or not they believe it is real. What's Wishful Thinking, which is the title of Kirsten's book, which is kind of nice. So you have that same kind of sort of thing where you have that idea of what is within us. So that is, I think, one way, if you wanted to spin the book where it was more contemporary, but I wouldn't take all of the magic out. I would just change the magic in it to being more, it could just be her.
I have like you read a very, very early variation of this story, and I have, like, no one can see this, no one can experience it except her, which has her constantly questioning, is she losing her mind, whatever. So I had originally called the book The Magic Within, because I originally wanted it to be ambiguous, like, did that really happen? In her mind it did, but then I needed a way to have I needed someone to help her, and the only way I could do that is if that person could glimpse it as well. So I ended up changing it so James had a glimpse of what was going on with the violence, so you could help her find the trunk. But I mean, I could probably try to downplay that and make it more all the physical things that happen, or maybe have them, she thinks they happen, but they don't. I don't know.
Yeah, or there is another explanation for the things that happen, or it's coincidence or chance that those things happen. And of course, then the other option that the agent provided you is then go full magic, right? And really hep that up. And I think that is, I would then increase the role of James, where it is then another person. So it's clear that there is something happening. He's involved with it as well. And it's undeniably a magical story that is happening.
For that, what she wanted was to make it all about the violin, and the violin maybe being an evil entity, and put a ghost in it, and then well, both of them either way would be a complete rewrite. If I went purely contemporary, it would be a complete rewrite. If I went this magical realism thing, and judging from her favorite book in the world, which is The Astonishing Color of After, that's probably what she thinks of it. That would be even more work. And she told me of the two, she thought the contemporary would be easier for me to do, and I wouldn't lose Anna's voice. If I was going to go more on the magical realism side, it's a very different voice. It's a lot more dreamy and lyrical, and it would lose the sense of humor. That, like, Anna's pretty snarky and funny. So I don't know how to do that without writing a completely new book. So.
And I'm going to argue separate from that, because we have all sadly had to write a completely new book at some point. So I'm not going to let you get away with that. But I don't actually hear in your voice a passion for that. Like, even when you were like, well, she wants her to be like a ghost in it. Like the way you said that to me.
It's not my story. I mean, I could write that story. It would be amazing, but it wouldn't be Anna's story, and I have works that are plotted out that will be that story, but I don't see how to make this into that without losing Anna's voice. And I've had enough people say they love Anna's voice. Like,
I think, and I'm more than that, I think you love Anna's voice.
I do.
Right? So then I think first off, we know in the revised submit, if you do go forward with it, you know which way to go.
Yeah.
Right? So I think let's first just go dial back and be like, okay, so then that's what the story is. Then the question becomes, do you even want to change it the way that she's suggesting? And you don't have to answer that in this moment. You have queried 52 people?
Yeah.
I don't think you're done querying yet with the book just the way it is. Like, if there is something, like when you read that revise resubmit thing and you think, yeah, I really like the idea of doing that. And while you're still submitting to other people, you can play with it.
Right.
Try to do 2 or 3 chapters and, try and shift it where it's a little bit more ambiguous on the magic, that it's a contemporary story about a girl who has something happen to her, and she chooses to believe that what happens to her is magical, because that's what she needs to do to make the growth that she needs to make. Because you can imagine, you can even write, like, do a couple scenes, like one in the beginning and maybe one at the end, around how she sort of feels. Like at the end, if it's someone's like, maybe it's James, who's like, wow, we got so carried away, we thought it was magic, and now we know it wasn't, or whatever. And have her, look over at the violin and be like, I don't care what anyone says, to me it was real. And it doesn't really matter either way. Like, and then the reader's left to do that, like, maybe yes, maybe no.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
So I did.
Yeah, so I think this is actually, I'm going to fly, because I think it's a really nice comment from Marianne. So something happens, we often attribute it to magic or purpose, versus kind of maybe what's necessarily going on. People look for patterns, right? And so one of the things, like, and I'm going to put my skeptic hat on a moment, because I wrote a book about a fake psychic. And so as a result of that, I did a lot of research into psychics. And one of the things that they talked about is, if you're going to fake psychic ability, one of the reasons that it works is that people want to see connections to things. So people often see magic where it doesn't exist. So you could have someone in the book who's a little bit skeptical, who's putting that other perspective forward, who's basically saying, honey, the violin was never there, like never magical. You just needed to believe it was magical so you could do what you needed to do. Right? The Dorothy, you were never in Oz. Like, you were just knocked out, sweetie, the whole time. There's a lot of things where they talk about the Dumbo's feather is another great, everyone's like, yes, right? Like, the feather didn't make any difference. Dumbo just needed to believe in the feather in order to fly. But once he knew it was him, he could do that. And you will see that. There's another book that I can't think of for at the moment where the magic was always within that person. Right? So they just needed to recognize that. So you could definitely, and go watch Dumbo again, or watch The Wizard of Oz again, and look at kind of how they play that out, and then decide, like, is that something I could potentially do with my manuscript while you're still continuing to query.
I got feedback from Jen's agent, which was fabulous, from Tori, and she had some wonderful things to say, and she actually gave me, and that's what I was kind of hoping I'd get from Stacy, was, this is what I don't think works, this is how I'd like you to fix it, but I didn't. But she made some really good suggestions about the pacing, and I could see myself trying to do that and then to do what you want to do, but at the same time, maybe continuing to query a few more times, but then you burn all your bridges, you know what I mean? So
you never burn them. Like a no is not a burn, right? Burning is, we're not talking, burning is like when you show up at the agent's office and you're like, take my story, woman, like, or I will do so. That's burning a bridge. All right. So you're not going to do that. You're not going to go all crazy pants on anyone. Promise.
Okay.
But you can make a decision about what you want to do. So you need to think about, what is it that I want for this story? And that's why I really want you to journal about what is it that you love about this story, right? And then I want you to hold on to that so that when you're looking at other people's notes, there is the difference between someone pointing out something that will help you make your story better, which is awesome, and someone taking your story in a direction you don't want to go. Mm-hmm. And that's why I thought it was really useful when you talked about the idea of like, well, the violin could have a ghost, and like I could hear in your voice, like, you don't want to do that. So you need to hang on to that and respect that you know what story you are telling. Okay. And you're going to hang on to that at the core, and you're going to filter all the feedback that is coming in under that thing. You're going to make this story the best that you can make it. And then either it will find its home, knocking wood, or if it doesn't, you could indie publish it, and you can indie publish it knowing that it is the story that you want to tell, a story that connected to readers, and a story that you made the very best that you could. Will it be perfect? No. I can guarantee, and it wouldn't be perfect if you find an agent and they sell it for $1 million, because 2 years from now, you're going to be a better writer than you are today, and you're going to look back at that book and be like, I could do it so much better. There isn't a published writer alive who doesn't cringe slightly when they look at their earlier books, because now you know things that you would do different. Mm-hmm. I have a hard time. It's often hard for me even when the book comes out, because it's been usually a year since I've turned it in to when it's actually coming out. And it's that thing like, oh, if I could just change a few more things. And I can't. I mean, that is the one beauty of indie publishing, is if down the road from now you have a few changes, you could actually make those changes. You can't do that with traditional publishing. You can't get that second kick at the can. But I hear from you that I believe that you know what you want to do. You want to pursue traditional publishing to start. You want to keep your story with elements of magic in it. You don't want to go full magic. So take a look at some of the feedback that you've gotten recently. Like, sit with it and be like, that is something I feel good about or not feel good about. Do not change your story to fit what someone else wants, because it then becomes their story. And to be honest, you'll never pull it off, because it will never be a story that you were ever really passionate to tell. You're just kind of writing what someone else wanted.
Yeah. And that's how I was starting to feel.
Yeah.
I feel like I want to do it for her. I don't want to let her down. That's the sensation I have that's inside of me, and that's not right.
No.
I'd rather write her a brand new story that I know she'd love, because now I know what she's looking for.
And I want you to write a brand new story, more importantly, that you love. Because she is just one person.
Yeah, exactly.
And, we imbue, and I say this as someone who actually loves my agent. Like, I think she's all kinds of fantastic. But she is not the be-all, end-all. Do I think she's smart about the publishing industry? Yes. Do I think she's made mistakes? Yes. They are not infallible. This is not the kind of business, because it's fundamentally always going to be subjective. It's not like they're surgeons who are becoming better surgeons the longer they're in the industry, right? These are people who are trying to predict what people are going to want and read. And they don't know. They're making their best guess, and they're making their best guess based on the fact that they're passionate readers. But the people in this room, as Bonnie have pointed out, are also very passionate readers. So we don't necessarily know, because you have something like Trump being in the White House and the things happening in the news, and that changes what people want to read, right? So you have books that come out, there's some kind of, event like 9/11, and that changes what people want. Or a book takes off and people are like, wow, I loved Hunger Games. I want more, something like that. And all of a sudden we're on this dystopian craze, right? And all of a sudden dystopian's crazy. So the most important thing is that you love this book. That is fun, because that is the one core. That is the true north. Don't make agents into your feather that you think you need to fly. All right? Don't make them chicken butt fluff. That is all that they are. There is nothing magical about agents or editors. They cannot make you fly. An agent saying that they love your book doesn't mean it's a good book. And an agent saying they don't love your book doesn't mean it's a bad book. It is just their opinion. Your story flies because you believe it flies. That's what will give it wings. That's what will make it work. Nothing else.
Okay.
Hugs. We need like a hug emoji. We all look kind of scary when we do that. I'm not sure if that's the right thing. But, different from jazz hands, like, right? Yes, Bonnie's got it good, right? This is really hard. And so next week, Donna's doing my office hours next Wednesday morning. So I'm here tomorrow morning, but next week, Donna's going to do my office hours, and she's going to have you guys working on personal positive affirmations. So you guys, I think, saw some of the ones that I put into the GLIP community. So you're going to be writing some of your own.
And without being a spoiler here, I know that at least one person said they're not working for me. And what was that, Leslie? You're muted. And I actually have done a whole ton of research for something that I'm working on, where I have got a solution. If the I am a writer, isn't working for you, there's an alternative, and it's pretty easy, and there's science behind it. So come next Wednesday. There.
You're going to want to be there. And also, just for clarity, positive affirmations aren't magical incantations. It isn't that you look in the mirror and you say,
what? No,
yeah.
Tell me that.
They are not magical incantations. It is the idea of rewriting. So we all have, again, from psychological, we have things that we tell ourselves over and over, and it wears a groove like water through a stone. So if you're constantly saying, I'm no good at this, 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 it takes a long time to rewrite that pattern, because your brain will just fall right back into it. That's what it does. So it's not a magical thing where you look in the mirror and you're like, I have a story worth telling. And that your brain goes, hot damn, you do. And is off to the races, right? It's going to be something that's going to take probably a couple of overtimes, and it's a repeating and a kind of thing. And apparently there's all kinds of other good stuff coming up next Wednesday. So you're going to want to make sure that you are checking that out. But that's why for you, Leslie, and for anyone else who's having that moment, sit down, write down tonight, I wrote this story because this story excited me because there was a moment in time where you were so passionate, where you were running back to your computer, where you were waking up in the middle of the night, like, oh, I know what needs to happen next. And you were so excited about it. And the hard thing is that fades, right? And it's hard sometimes to get back to it. So it's maybe similar to a long-term relationship. So when you first start dating someone and you are like, I cannot keep my hands off that person, right? And it's hot and it's passionate and you know it's right. And then eventually you realize that they leave their toenail clippings on the bathroom floor, and there's different kinds of things. And some people give up at that point, right? It is an option. So we started with the idea of like, do you tank this manuscript? It's no different than I think saying like, do you end this marriage? And there may be a time where it's like, you know what? I do need to end this marriage. It's not healthy anymore. I need to stop working on this manuscript. It's done everything it could for me. I'm a different person. I have a different story I want to tell, that kind of stuff. But that's not what I hear from you, Leslie. I'm not hearing you be like, I don't even know why I like this story anymore. I started it for this reason, and then it just kind of isn't there. Like, I still hear that passion for it. So you need to find that passion again.
Can I actually jump something in?
Of course.
Thank you. So in the other side of passion is purpose. And we can see your passion. Maybe also think about, what is your purpose in telling this story? And I know you have a really clear purpose in telling this story. And if you can connect to the purpose, that can often be more powerful than the passion, according to the brain scientist people.
And they probably know something.
Probably.
But
purpose is
a little bit. Yeah. Thinking about that. So you're going to go through, you're going to think about those positive things. You're going to think about why you did the story. And only when you've sat with that for at least a good day, do I want you to go back and look at the feedback and decide what feedback you want to take. But I am not hearing in anything that you've said tonight that makes me think you should give up on this story. Nothing.
Hey,
So
Dawn.
I'm sorry. No. Jenny, your thoughts?
I'm back on the affirmations, and I went through a divorce 8 or 9 years ago now, and was very depressed. And one of the things that I read about how you get out of that depression is if saying it isn't working for you, write it in a journal. Like, one of the things that it had me do is every day before I went to bed at night, I had to sit down and write all the positive things that I wanted, all the positive things that had happened, all the things that had made me happy that day. So depending on how your brain works, if the saying it isn't working, the writing it down might. Analog, not typing, like notebook, pen, pencil, paper.
Yeah, it activates, like we do know, if you put people in MRIs and you ask them to say something versus write something, it activates a different part of the brain. And that may be partly why that shakes things free. So it's a really valuable thing. All right. So that takes us to the end of our happy little happy hour. We made Leslie cry, so I feel good about what we accomplished tonight. My work here is done. For everybody else, Leslie has homework, but it's not bad homework for you either. This is a hard business. It's a discouraging business a lot of the time. That's why when I talked about, the mixed feedback and the I loved it versus I hated it, that's not going to go away when it's published. It's just going to be a different crowd of people giving you that feedback. And it will come through both ways. There's absolutely no way around it. So you have to get into the thing for you, the purpose, what it is that you love about it.
Well, there is a secondary benefit to this because when I went through all that, I haven't been able to work on my new, I'm supposed to be doing a round of revisions of my new manuscript this month, and I just was so frozen because I kept thinking, I don't know what I'm doing. I can't write a story. Why am I even trying this again? And I was just stuck. But today I wrote a whole page of my brand new opening. So I think I feel better about, I can do this. It's hard, but I can do it. So
and I think it's okay to have a little bit of time where you just take a break. Like, it hurts, right? And sometimes it's okay to acknowledge that it hurts, but to recognize you are a storyteller. This is what you do, and you're going to keep doing it, and you do it well. So I think it is important sometimes to just remind ourselves, this is what I do. I can do this. And get back on there, and not, I just love the Dumbo reference, maybe because they're remaking Dumbo, so it's just sticking in my head. And also that movie made me bawl like nobody's business. basically Disney traumatized me in general as a child. But Dumbo was one that definitely took me out. Don't make someone else's opinion your feather. I think too often we do that. If you need a feather to help you fly, then make it something that you control. Make it something in your life that you can control, that you can hang on to. Tell yourself that your magic typewriter is your feather, and that you're going to hang on to that, and you're going to hold it, and you know that if you have that, it's going to be a good thing. But don't give that feather to someone else. Don't let someone else make that decision, because if you do, you will keep getting grounded, because those people are fickle. And their opinions change, and all it will take, I can guarantee you, if a book comes out next week that is about a magical trumpet, every agent that you queried is going to call you back and be like, hey, you still have that violin story? Like, we were looking now for other kinds of things that would be like that. So they would change their mind like that. So don't let them be what makes that decision. All right. Yay. All right, everyone. I want to thank everyone for coming. I'm going to be here tomorrow. We have a question from Lily on point of view. So tomorrow morning, we're going to be talking about point of view. How do you do it? What the heck is it? And all those good things. So that's tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. I may look to start a little bit early tomorrow because I have to be someplace at 10:30. So we may just try and squeeze a little bit early in. So you'll see that. All right, everyone. I'm stopping the recording.